The story begins by showing a gangster named Jocker sneaking into a house. It turns out that the house belongs to Malcolm, a drug mobster. Because he is a gangster who often plunges others into becoming illegal powder addicts. When Jocker entered, Malcolm was apparently asking his wife for rations, but the wife didn't want to because his body smelled. When they want to go to sleep, they were surprised by the appearance of Jocker, who pointed a gun at them. Malcolm thought that his house was going to be robbed, so he asked Jocker to take any goods as long as he would release and let go of his family. However, the gangster didn't care what he said and finished him off without mercy. As a result of last night's incident, Jocker was arrested by the police and will have to answer for his actions in court. He didn't say much, as Jocker was ready to face his punishment. In addition, he also never revealed the reason why he had the heart to kill Malcolm and his wife. Later, Malcolm's father-in-law was asked to say something to the killer of his son and daughter-in-law. While holding back his anger, he also asked the judge to punish Jocker severely. In the end, the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment. Upon arrival at the prison, Jocker monitored the situation there. As for him, this was a new environment that would be his home until he died. In the prison, he saw a bunch of people playing cards, basketball, and other games. And one of them was James, who was none other than his own father. He never thought he would meet his father in prison as a fellow inmate. The story flashes back to Jocker's childhood. At that time, he was a very geeky boy who didn't have many friends. As a result, he was often bullied by students with bigger bodies. Jocker, who was injured, finally went to the UK's room, and in this place he was approached by a student named Lamarck. This student then asked who had bullied him, but Jocker said that he got the wound after slipping in the bathroom. Nevertheless, Lamarck knew that Jocker had lied to him, and from then on, he decided to become Jocker's best friend, so as not to be bullied anymore. When Jocker returned home from school, he met his friend Anthony, or TQ. His face looked battered after being beaten by a high school student. Feeling his pride being trampled on, TQ invited his friends to take revenge. However, Jocker didn't want to get into trouble, especially since he had been bullied too many times. In fact, when he got home, Jocker was immediately beaten up by his own father. Meanwhile, his mother Delanda didn't agree with the way James, Jocker's father, treated his son. However, James argued that he wanted to educate his son to be a brave person. And the next day, Jocker immediately practiced the brutality taught by his father. He desperately went to the big student who had bullied him, then brutalized him mercilessly. Because of his actions, Jocker was suspended from school, and this made Delanda angry with James, who had educated his son too harshly. During his suspension, Jocker constantly heard his parents arguing at home. His mother was angry with his father, who was permanently unemployed and couldn't support the family. Moreover, James always spent his money on drugs, which prevented him from providing for his family. After an argument, James chose to leave home. He felt that he couldn't live with Delanda, who was always angry without stopping. Before leaving, James advised Jocker not to follow in his footsteps into the criminal world. He also regretted not being a good father, as he was often in and out of prison. One day, a student approached Jocker. The student said that his father was buying illegal powder at the crossroads. Hearing this, Jocker rushed to confirm it. And sure enough, his father was indeed buying drugs from a dealer. And unexpectedly, the dealer was Malcolm. Jocker then went to the dealer and asked him to stop selling drugs to his father. But Malcolm refused because James was his loyal customer. A few days later, he saw his father arguing on the phone. James swore at the other person and asked for his money back because he needed to buy drugs. But the man didn't care about any of his rants. After hanging up, James went to meet the man. And the curious Jocker finally followed wherever his father went. Apparently, the person James met was the owner of the house he rented. And again, the owner of the house didn't return the money. This also made James angry that he shot the owner of the house and then ran away. Since his father committed murder, Jocker has grown into a directionless teenager. Moreover, his father had also been imprisoned. Jocker and TQ often commit criminal acts, one of which is being a thief. But even though he often committed criminal acts, Jocker had dreams of becoming a famous rapper. and after robbing people, he would create songs in his own recording studio. Not long after, Lamarck arrived in a wheelchair. Apparently, he was already a soldier in the United States Army. Unfortunately, he had just been discharged due to an injury sustained while on duty, and if he wants to walk normally again, then his legs must be surgery immediately. At the same time, TQ met a drug mobster, Malcolm, and his friend, T-Rex. They invited him to run an illegal powder business together. The next day, Jacor and TQ attended the funeral of a gangster who was allegedly killed. He was a subordinate of Stunna, a mafia boss and Malcolm's archenemy. Here it is revealed that TQ often approaches many mobsters in order to get money. He also always invites Jacor to come with him. But Jacor prefers to sell his songs rather than becoming a drug dealer. Not long after, Stunna approached the two of them and discussed the murder of his men. He also suspects that the killer is Malcolm's henchman. After the funeral, TQ introduced Jacor to T-Rex, who turned out to be a rapper too. T-Rex asked him to send his best song, who knew he could help him become a famous rapper. A few weeks later, Jacor met up with his girlfriend Shantae. Here he got the news that she was pregnant. Although he had no money, he promised to provide for her and her future child, and to be a responsible father, unlike his father. Jacor also called several job centers to get a job. Jacor then got a job at a shoe shop. Shantae drove him on his first day of work, and of course Jacor was very excited. He also couldn't wait to provide for his future child with halal money, so that his child would grow up to be a righteous child. But unfortunately, his enthusiasm began to fade when there were mothers who were racist to him. She accused him of being a thief just because he was black. After work, Jacor calls and invites TQ to go to Stunna's birthday party. But it turned out that he was busy making illegal powder at Malcolm's place. He knew that the gangster was Stunna's archenemy. Even so, that night he still came to the party with Jacor and Shantae. After that, the three of them met Stunna, who was busy watching drifting wild races on the streets. At the same time, there were two men who she suspected to be Malcolm's men. And without further ado, Stunna immediately finished them off brutally. Seeing the incident, Jacor and his friends hurriedly left before the police arrived. The next day, Jacor returned to work as usual, but he overheard the chatter of his coworkers, a female employee who said that she didn't like Jacor's existence. The woman also racially mocked his face. Not accepting this, he immediately told TQ. They both then followed the woman into the white man's compound. Here Jacor is very upset with the white people because their lives seem fine, while he always receives racist treatment from them. And unfortunately, when he wanted to take revenge, Jacor was ticketed by the police and taken to the police station for being suspicious, even though there was no evidence of any crime. It turned out that the policemen were looking for information about the illegal powder dealers, who were none other than Stunna and Malcolm. However, Jacor pretended not to know them and had nothing to do with the drug business. Not long after, he was released from the police station because his mother's new lover had bribed the policemen. Despite being released from prison, Jacor seemed to dislike his mother's boyfriend. Eventually, the two of them had an argument, leading to a fistfight. Seeing her son out of control, Delanda was disgusted by his behavior. But because she still loved him, she only asked her son not to see her again if his behavior had not changed. And when he heard his mother's words, Jacor looked very disappointed. Apparently, the mother prefers a widower rather than her own biological son. A while later, Stunna asked Jacor to come to her house. The mobster considered Jacor to be a reliable person. Stunna offered him a job as his personal bodyguard. In addition, Stunna's assistant also said that if he wanted to get more money, then he had to kill Malcolm. Here, Jacor feels a dilemma when he will accept this job. Because from the beginning, he intended to earn good money to raise his son, but in reality, the money he got wasn't much good enough. After returning from Stunna's house, he visited Lamarck at the hospital, because after the operation his friend's condition was not stable. This was because the operation had failed miserably, so he hadn't regained consciousness until now. In addition, he will not be able to walk again and will have to use a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He said that Lamarck didn't deserve to suffer like this, especially since he was the only friend who lived a straight life and never committed a crime. Then he immediately told TQ about Lamarck's failed surgery. Hearing the news, TQ wondered why Lamarck wanted to join the military when the government never cared about black people like them. And in his opinion, black people don't need to participate in defending the country. After discussing Lamarck, TQ again invited Jacques to join the drug business. But even though he needs the money, he still refuses the offer because he doesn't want to end up like his father. Not long after, T-Rex arrived with a packet of illegal powder. Then, before Jacques left, he showed her a perverted video. And it turns out that the woman in the video is Shantae. Suddenly, Jacques felt betrayed by his own girlfriend. Arriving at Shantae's house, Jacques was immediately angry, and because he was too emotional, he considered his girlfriend a comfort woman. Meanwhile, Shantae explained that the video was just her past before meeting Jacques. Even so, Jacques was already angry and decided to leave Shantae on the spot. Since breaking up with Shantae, Jacques felt like his life was falling apart, and to calm himself down, Jacques chose to walk around the city while contemplating his miserable life. A few weeks later, T-Rex and TQ visited Stunna's house to try a new type of drug. Here, Jacques was seen accepting an offer to be Stunna's personal bodyguard. T-Rex then asked him to play rap songs that he had composed, but after listening to it, this gangster didn't like the songs. Jacques actually wanted to punch T-Rex in the face, but he tried to restrain himself. The next day, Jacques went to Stunna's house again, because he needed a lot of money, and in the end, he accepted his previous offer to kill Malcolm. Hearing this, Stunna was very happy. He then gave him 2 pistols and thousands of dollars. Jacques wanted to do this because he still wanted to be a father who was responsible for his son's life. He also wanted to repair his relationship with Shantae, and the only way to earn money was to accept this dangerous job. Later that evening, Jacques prepared to drive to Malcolm's house. Then in the car, he sings a rap song he made up as a prayer before brutalizing. And when the time came, he watched Malcolm's house from a distance. There he saw TQ and T-Rex playing with some women. When the situation was safe, he slipped in with great caution. Once inside the house, Jacques immediately pointed his 2 pistols. Here, it was also revealed that his motivation wasn't just money. He wanted to kill Malcolm because the mobster had once plunged his father into the drug business. Without further ado, he finished him off without mercy. After the brutalization, Jacques went to his ex-girlfriend's house, and Shantae, who still had feelings, allowed Jacques to enter. She also found out that Jacques had killed people. Jacques then asked Shantae to hide his gun in a safe place. And while the woman was away, Jacques secretly slipped a wad of money on the sofa to pay for the delivery of her child. And after Jacques apologized for his previous actions, the two made up. The next morning, the house was raided by the police. As a result, Jacques immediately ran to the kitchen to look for a gun. But unfortunately, he was surrounded and couldn't escape anymore. And from then on, he had to live the rest of his life in prison. On his first day, Jacques met Stunna's younger brother named Rollo. The prisoner reminded Jacques that Malcolm's men who were there would definitely take revenge. Therefore, he must be able to protect himself by joining the prison authorities. And as he wanted to return to his cell, one of Malcolm's men threw a punch at his face. When he wanted to retaliate, James, his father, stopped him and told him to stay out of trouble in the cell. Then Jacques opened the letter sent by Shantae. The point is that the woman has given birth to her first child, named Zion. Jacques was very happy to get this happy news. In addition to the letter, Shantae also sent Jacques a childhood photo that reminded him of his childhood in prison. Jacques and his father met more often, and although it was awkward, the two tried to mend their relationship. Here James also gives advice to Jacques, who has just had a child. The point is that the child must be raised properly, so that his life is not broken. The next day, James approached his son, who was sitting alone. He asked Jacques to be careful, as TQ had sided with Malcolm's gang and would send men to kill him. Afterwards, Jacques started to pay attention to the other inmates to stay alert and just in case. He smuggled matches, nails, and a toothbrush into his cell. And with these simple tools, he made a knife that was quite sharp. On the same day, the Rallo approached him again. He then said that Stunna's minions would protect him from Malcolm's men. In addition, this prisoner also congratulated him on the birth of his child, and prayed that he would become a righteous child. Long story short, Rallo received information from his brother that TQ would be sent to prison, because he had violated the mandatory reporting requirement to the police. Jacor was quite surprised to hear that his friend was going to jail. This also makes him anxious, lest TQ is the one who will be sent to kill him. Elsewhere, Stunna and her assistants already knew that the T-Rex had sided with Malcolm's gang. As a result, he immediately riddled it with bullets until the gangster died. At the same time, TQ was thrown into prison, and it turned out that Rallo's information was correct. Before he was killed, Jacor took his homemade knife, then pretended to greet his friend. As they were hugging, suddenly both of them pulled out knives, and they killed each other. And after a long struggle, Jacor finally finished off TQ. Surprisingly, he was not punished at all. Meanwhile, the warders and other inmates pretended not to see the incident. 1 month later, Jacor received a visit from Shantae and her mother. Here he met his son for the first time. He was also happy that his relationship with his mother had improved. From here on, Jacor promises to atone for all his sins and will not disappoint his family again. At the end of the movie, Jacor and James began to get along again like a father-son relationship. They even often plant trees together as a sign to open a new life. With that, the movie ended.